Hello and welcome to the dive. Still Honda special. You know what? I'm going to give it to him. We've got a holiday episode. Congratulations. Off season was packed full of presents.
Yeah, we got the sweaters out in force. I got my kind of
just looks like you're showing us your leg.
So that's the problem is the skin here. I don't like
down
that.
Further.
Also,
don't pull it too far down because there's other things we don't want to see at the top.
That's what the desk is for.
Well, it's a holiday.
It's been a while, guys. How we doing
here? We got our holiday sweaters. We got our holiday cheer.
These are not my holiday sweater, by the way.
Yeah,
no, that's his.
This is forced upon me by the producer.
You're. I don't know if it shows on any of the other camera angles, but like right now, your laptop's in the way. Yeah. Beautiful. For people who are listening on audio, they just don't know what they're seeing. It's a very small
it's like
sweater.
A crop top.
Yeah.
A crop top.
I came in with a classy dark maroon cashmere sweater, and apparently that is not.
We were specifically told ugly Christmas sweaters.
No, he said Christmas
this
sweaters.
Is the only one that fits the brief.
I came in with this.
That is ugly. That's true.
It's just a red sweater. What the?
All right. Well, it's been too long.
It's also really hot. I'm gonna have to take this off.
You have to take it off.
Get the AC pumping. Help.
We're gonna get into some of the off-season moves. A lot of people have been hitting us up on socials, asking for some sort of an episode to cover all the roster madness. And we've also got some bonus info here. We're actually going to cover lock-in and the draft for lock-in, the groups that the teams actually did end up in.
I think this is the coolest part that we get to start off-season roster, rumors with, is we can go in order of what the teams think is the power level of the other teams. Because how lock-in works is top two teams put in each in a different group, and they get to choose which team gets booted to the other group. So whoever you choose, that's who you think is strongest.
Yep.
And you have to start with top two teams, Team Liquid, 100 Thieves. Guess who the first team booted was? It was not Cloud9. They booted Evil Geniuses over to Group A. I believe it was 100 Thieves that chose them to boot them out. So 100 Thieves thinks that the EG roster with the young guns is better than the LS Cloud9.
I mean, that's a debate we'll get into. But before we hop in there, we got to talk about the number one team still, actually. Because, it's based off last season, which fortunately worked out this time. Because sometimes, like, a team gets a total overhaul as, like, the number one or number two team. It blows up, and it's nothing like it. 100 Thieves is almost exactly the same. And Team Liquid, while having a lot of turnover, did their usual Yankees throw their wallet at the problem and hope it gets fixed. So like it still feels like the right two teams to be leading this off.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say I think 100 Thieves are heavy favorites for lock-in because lock-in is least amount of scrim time, especially some of the teams, may not even all be together in the same place till much later. I talked to a lot of teams, especially that made later signings. The visas might not come in till later, so maybe they're going to be practicing from two different locations, things like that. 100 Thieves is the same roster. They're not going to have any of those problems. They're coming off of a championship, and I think as a result, for lock-in specifically, they are going to be heavy favorites.
So I actually think that it'd be cooler for people to hear the entire lineup of who these teams think is the ranking before we go into each team.
Sounds like something we should have decided beforehand. But let's do it.
I would like to just fire them all.
Go for it.
Go for it.
This is the chain of the choice of the teams. It was 100 Thieves and Team Liquid. Boom, Evil Geniuses. So we can hopefully get a graphic in here. They love it when we promise graphics live during the episode.
So
by the way,
100 Thieves put EG in Group B.
So
it's going to be fully animated.
Then
with their full roster.
Cloud9. Then Cloud9 got booted over to the other side
by TL,
and they're already angry at us. Finish it.
And then EG then, like essentially what you're thinking is, so 100 Thieves, TL, top two teams, 100 Thieves choose EG. That's power ranking them basically third. TL then sends C9 to Group B. That's power ranking them fourth. EG, the next team that they sent over to Group A was TSM. C9 then chose Immortals. TSM then chose CLG. Immortals choose Golden Guardians. CLG chooses FlyQuest.
Yeah.
And the ding toss is that 10th place that gets put in
last
Group
pick
B.
in dodgeball.
Yep.
I'm not really surprised by any of this. The cool things are in debating some of the little in-between ones. So now that we have the order and now that people know the order of what the teams perceive the offseason roster changes to be, let's actually dive into Team Liquid and 100 Thieves.
Yeah, so we can start at the top. I think we kind of already started talking about 100 Thieves. Obviously, they were the first seed. To me, they're the only team in the league doing a run back. They added Tenacity, so it's like, yeah, it's a little bit different. I'll be interested to see how much they actually use him in lock-in, because if they're serious about getting him stage time and actually using him as a legit sub back and forth with Someday, then lock-in is a great time to really test that roster. So it could be a different look coming out from 100 Thieves, just by nature of them being the defending champions and having changed the least, they're going to need the least run-up time, the least practice to actually get to that full level.
I'm just glad that we actually have a team that is not making significant changes. In a world where every single team, makes these big changes, brings in young players from different areas of the world, I'm glad that we have something to judge by from the previous season.
Yep.
And also, I'm always a really big fan of building on the synergies and the relationships of existing players. It's a no-brainer, since they already had success and they just won the LCS. You should keep this roster. You should try and continue to improve with this core group of players, because they've only had to make minor adjustments over the past couple of years coming from Golden Guardians with the main pack, changing out the mid laner, changing some coaching around it, and we've been able to see the growth from these sets of players already working together. So that's what I'm most excited about for 100 Thieves. Not only is it a unique thing to not be changing anything, but we really get to put that, build on previous success and continue to improve relationships that are existing.
Yeah, the only real change, or like the biggest change beyond the Tenacity thing, is Mythy joined them from Cloud9, I guess would probably be.
Yeah, and they're keeping, it's not like they're getting rid of anyone for
Reaper's
Mythy
still
though.
there.
So
yeah. So I think the Tenacity thing, I'm sure they'll give him some playing time. Depends how hard they want to go into that, but I would expect to see him a little bit as someone who has been on their 100 Thieves next, then Academy, and then climbing up the ranks. He's someone who a lot of people who are more into the development scene have had their eye on for a long time. And so this is the perfect kind of testing ground in a low stakes setting, but still, on stage, hopefully in high stake or high competition.
He was getting a ton of hype around Worlds because he was crushing solo queue with all the pros, playing there. He was absolutely dominating it. At one point, if not at the end, he was the highest rated Western player, I think, at the kind of Worlds bootcamp type thing.
No scrims. Cheater.
Course. Yeah, of course. But he also had a ridiculous win rate. He was performing really, really well. He was getting a lot of attention, a lot of praise from different pros that were playing against him in solo queue. So I think that's what kind of brought him more into the limelight a little bit with the public. People are getting pretty excited about how well this guy was playing, at least in solo queue.
another cool thing is that they promised that he's going to be dedicated to the LCS team.
Yep.
So a lot of times when you have those, substitute positions, they have to also play academy, and you have, diverted attention. Basically, you can't focus fully on it. So that's another cool thing, that they're committing fully to having him perfect practice, environment, and try and build him up there. The other thing about the hype, though, I would say 100 Thieves do better than any of the other teams as far as building up and hyping their academy or their amateur players. Evil Geniuses is catching up, but I think 100 Thieves, by virtue
Tenacity.
of most of the people's perceptions of academy or amateur players comes from just, what's the hypest story, or what have most people been talking about? Because not a lot of people actually watch it. And so it matters so much, how much your org also helps build story and hype around you like that. So I think that's an interesting thing too, because not only Tenacity, but also, Kenvi and rumored giant buyouts for him and stuff like that.
I heard from a number of people, it's, $1 million buyout.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
insane to me.
And maybe it got lowered this year, but still, obviously a lot of people believe that some of these players are going to be potentially the future of the league.
Yeah. Anything else on 100 Thieves before we hop on the TL?
We can go TL.
TL. They made a lot of moves. If you've been living under a rock, or maybe the only place you get your league news is the Dive, surprise, Bjergsen's on Team Liquid now. He's unretired from TSM, joined Team Liquid. They also
just blew someone's mind, but only
one person was like, what the? What? They also grabbed Hans Sama. He's coming over. They have Bwipo switching back from jungle to top lane. And all of this is contingent on Core JJ being able to get his green card. And I've heard rumors that that might not exactly be in time for lock-in, but that is their intended roster that they've signed for the year.
And Giloto, they brought him over from Immortals. So yeah, they changed a ton of stuff. And I mean, you just look at the star power on this team, and obviously they're going to be good. But the expectation for a team like this is pretty much bare minimum. You win the LCS, right? Like I think it's a failure if you don't win the LCS, just based on the names that you have on this team. I think everyone has faith in like the individual players. My big questions, obviously everyone's bigger questions are going to be Bjergsen's coming off of your coaching. Bwipo is coming off of a year playing a different role. How are they going to work? I think that's question one. And question two for me is stylistically, is this a group of players that really kind of like meshes, right? Because it does feel like a lot more of the supportive style of players. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to be a team that just plays bot lane towards Hans Sama. That's not really been the style that he normally plays. Like Tim Sven-Houston, I'm probably going to say that his name wrong. He did a really good video on this, kind of breaking this down and just talking about Hans Sama and how he's never played that kind of like hog all the resources type role that you would associate with like Double Lift or Uzi and that sort of style, where everything is dumped into him and then he kind of like does, the insane DPM. He's been more of a well-rounded player, not necessarily getting a tremendous amount of resources, doing really well with what he has. Santorin is more of a supportive guy. Bwipo has always been more of that supportive style of player as well. And when I saw him playing in the in-houses, he was playing exclusively tanks. So, it puts a lot of pressure on either Bjergsen, who's coming off of a gap year coaching, or Hans Sama to change their style. And I think that is the biggest question. I still have no questions in that, like, they're going to be really good. Like, they just are, just by talent alone. But are they going to reach their potential? And being able to find the right style and right kind of strategies with these players, I think is going to answer that question.
Yeah, I have no problems or qualms about, any of those players being carry players. I think a lot of times previous examples are kind of used to put players in stricter boxes than that player actually has limitations for. We've seen games, Hans Sama's fed and he pushes his DPS to the limit.
Rengar,
so I'm not scared about that aspect at all. I think they'll be quite fine. One of the biggest things to me is that there were so many cool things leading up to all these changes and leaks about like why Bjergsen is going where he is and stuff like that. And it's like, it still hasn't been officially like released or whatever what he was talking about, but like the leak of the rumor was that he wanted to play with a single player, and that player has got to be Core JJ on this team because Santorin's the only other one.
And it's not him. You just gotta throw him under the bus.
And I'm just gonna make the call. It's a 50-50. I'm saying it was Core.
The champ.
Those two players to me are the players that have most been talked about by other players that have played with them as being the best leaders, role models,
work ethic,
and hardest workers for sure. So that's one thing I feel like this team is going to be extremely driven. Bjergsen was already over in Korea doing their boot camp and stuff like that. So I think that is really goes a long way as far as answering your other question about the role swap for Bwipo and Bjergsen, being a coach previously. I feel like this team will have the work ethic and the drive to be able to get past that. That's not saying it's definitely not guaranteed, but that's why I have, faith in answers to a couple of those questions.
Yeah, just in terms of star power, everyone's like, you have to be one or two. Like, sure, you can.
I think you have to win,
but yeah, you're trying to win. Who knows what the budget is? This has been a weird year, and I don't know if we'll go too far into like the
into the budget, get into Jensen,
and like
they had to pay.
all the weird buyout things that have happened this year. It's been a very strange year, and Team Liquid feels like, along with Vitality, maybe the only two teams in the West that have been like, throw more money when everyone else was like, we've thrown too much. Like TL still going down into that like route. So it is, when you're doing that, you expect to win. I think fans will have that expectation, and a lot of players have that expectation. Bjergsen is not coming back to get second, I don't think. Like, he wants to win. He wants to get those international worlds accomplishments that he hasn't gotten before, and thinks he can do that with Core and some of the other players here.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And like, to your point, Kobe, I know that these players can play that style, but like, those are my only questions is like, how will they fit together? How well will they work together? Who's going to be the one to kind of like take that lead? Because one thing I will say is a lot of people are like, oh, well, Bjergsen will just do it because he's the one probably out of the three who's done like, been the carry for TSM the most. But I will say I watched a lot of him playing in Korea when he was streaming. I do think he's lost a step. I do think he looked worse. But that being said, he has a legendary work ethic, and I know he's going to put in a tremendous amount of work. And we talked to him a little bit when they were doing the TL promo, and like, he was saying how, like, I know it's going to be a lot of work, and I know I'm going to get after it. So like, I have faith that he will get there, but I don't think he is at the same level as he was when he left. Like, I do think he looked a lot worse. I do think he was making a lot more mistakes when I was watching him. I don't know where he got to, but he was like doing fine. It wasn't too bad. He was in Masters or whatever, but it wasn't like he had a crazy win rate. He was low Masters when I was watching him with a couple hundred games played, and just making more mistakes than I associate with him because he is such a good player. He's always been really good at solo queue. He's an incredible worker, but I'm just not as sure like how incredible they'll be out the gate. Maybe they're going to be amazing, but maybe they're going to stumble a little bit.
Good thing he made sure his biggest competition is in the LCS this split. Took a spot.
Thanks, Steve, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like from his interview, he's sad that Jensen's not there.
He's always been a guy who wants more competition, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I knew you were just joking, but it'll be interesting.
Yep. Moving on. EG.
Sounds good.
So the first pick team for 100 Thieves sending EG in. Pretty big change-ups. It sounded like they had a pretty huge decision to make this offseason with who they were going to go. There was a route where Doublelift and Jensen were like pitching themselves as a super team to come together and join EG as like the one that they're really pitching themselves to. And instead, EG opted to stay younger focused, probably cheaper as well. But
Team NA.
But yeah, Team NA. I mean, it's still got 3 North American players, which is quite a bit for teams that you're projecting in the top half of the league.
And 2 like almost rookies.
Yeah, 2 of them are very young. So Danny's staying at the AD carry position. They brought up Jojopyun, who's probably the most hyped rookie prospect we've had in a while. I mean, last year Danny was pretty hyped, but Jojopyun is like the mid laner that everyone's like, he was a Fortnite pro, he's cracked, he's a zoomer, he's got all the mechanics, he's crazy. They grabbed Vulcan as well from Cloud9, and then Inspired from EU, who is one of the top junglers. So pretty insane lineup, and all that's going together with Impact still in the top lane.
Yeah, I talk to Contracts a lot, so I play a lot of games, and he was the one who is probably the best one to talk to about playing with Jojo because mid jungle was so big for them. When he was playing on that team, and he was talking, his opinion was that Jojo is pretty like jungle reliant, so it's going to be very interesting how Jojo and Inspired get along because Inspired coming over is literally the LEC MVP, has, you know, from rumors, has a pretty strong view of the game and is a strong-willed jungler. So I'm very curious. You know, mid jungle is always a big question for any team that's new, but especially for this team, I feel like is going to be very big because it is one of the most established junglers, LEC MVP versus young rookie hype coming up. And, you know, when Jojo was playing with Contracts, that was a tremendous amount of time where Contracts would gank for mid lane. Yep. And they would have a lot of importance on these timings, on being able to unlock each other. And so when you break that apart, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, if it, fuses right back together with this, everybody else, you know, really star-studded lineup that EG have been able to put together here. So that's kind of the magic question for me for this one. You know, you're posing questions on the previous one. And I'm like, do these pieces fit together? Is it right out of the gate? Does it also take a while to work on?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. I spoke to a few different people about Jojopyun, and I was already pretty excited about him because like a lot of people have been pointing to him, you know, as their big prospect. Like after talking to a number of different people, like,
are they all on EG or were they off of EG too?
Some on EG and some not on EG. And like I was hearing some things that were like getting me pretty excited. Like people thinking, you know, like the best prospect from NA ever. You know, things like along those lines. You know, I got
some
to watch
headlines there.
I got to watch a lot of his games and like some highlight clips that he's had and talk to some of the coaches and Peter Dunn and kind of his thoughts about him and like, you know, some of the intangibles that he brings as far as like communication and maturity in the game, things that he's recognizing like when they're actually playing in comms and in VOD reviews and stuff that like he was really impressed with. So, you know, like they are very excited about this player, and it was making me really excited about it. And I remember it was last year when Danny first got promoted. I was talking to Artemis, who was with EG, and he got me pretty excited about Danny, but I was like more hesitant. And now talking to a bunch of people, and like they sound even, you know, more excited about Jojo, and I'm just like, yeah, ooh, like I'm kind of all in on this. Like I think he's going to be really good, but it is way more pressure. You're playing against way better people. You have to mesh with a new team, you know, and when you're going up against better competition, he's a really aggressive player that can be punished, right? So there are question marks.
Gun to your head, top 3 all pro at some point this split.
Yes.
Bang.
I mean,
you shot him anyway. He answered.
It's the hype gun. It's a hype gun.
That's not how it works.
It's a hype.
You answered on time, and he just shot you.
I shot past him. It was the hype gun.
And so I talked to some players, I talked to some people outside EG, inside EG, but like pretty much everyone is really hyped for this guy. And I'm really excited to see the development of him. And if he's good out the gate, kind of like Danny was. I mean, Danny had a clear hole in his game, which is like Danny's laning phase isn't that good, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not it'll be much better year 2 with Vulcan and with more time, like that's a big question mark for Danny. I expect there to be like a clear hole or maybe clear holes in JoJo's games too. I just think that's kind of the way it works when you come up to pro level and you play against higher competition. They show you where you suck.
Yeah.
But I do expect him to play it at a high level, and I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, that's why I specifically was like, okay, how many of these people were inside EG? Because I know, especially EG coaching staff really focuses so much on building up new talent and always want to promote that. Plus, as we were talking about with 100 Thieves, it greatly benefits these organizations to create as much hype as humanly possible for all and any new prospects, because that can make them money, as well as the obvious benefits. You always want to hype up your own team. I'm not saying that invalidates anything, and I'm also quite hyped for it.
Especially when I was hearing from some people outside.
That was
I was like, okay, I was hearing some of the same things. I'm like, all right.
One thing too, in the off season, Mark was referring to some of the decisions that Evil Geniuses had to make. There were some divides that were coming out as far as which way they're going to go, and players versus coaching staff type of stuff. So,
well, that's what I think is interesting about this move is because on the one hand, I'd almost say it's not necessarily like we're talking about TL, like you want to win with this roster right away. And this one, I can't quite know where to place it. I'm curious what you guys think. Because to me, when you bring up JoJo and you bring up Danny, you're talking about these holes in the game and you want time to be able to patch that up. Like what's nice about signing them like this is you're saying, well, this is our future superstar mid laner we're hoping, and it doesn't need to get there this year. But at the same time, you're signing Inspired and you're bringing Impact in. So they're also in some sense like double dipping in that way where they're both bringing up someone that they believe in, but also like it puts a lot of pressure on him because like you said, Inspire's probably not going to be happy if he's like, why did I come here if this guy's just going to like int half my games because he's inconsistent and he's still learning the pro level.
I mean, I think it's like this, right? The upside is you just win the LCS if like everything's amazing, right? That's probably their hope, of course. But I mean, the like downside of him performing a bit worse is still like you're developing prospects. You're developing like these two native stars, for the future, which would be incredibly valuable, right? Like people who are residents, who are young, is really, really valuable. And I think that they also have probably more faith this year in the ability to perform at a high level with a young player after how well Danny played. Like Danny was great in playoffs. Danny had some incredible plays. Yes, he did have a weakness in his laning phase, but like he was so good in team fighting that, I mean, he was on All Pro, right? His first year, he was Rookie of the Year and All Pro. And if you can believe in JoJo in the same way, and I do think EG does, to where, yeah, there's going to be some holes, but he's going to be so good at the rest of the stuff that he's still going to be like a top level mid laner, then damn, like that's just a good signing.
Did you see Danny's reply to Jizuke's tweet when Jizuke was announcing that he was not on Evil Genius anymore? Because it definitely seemed like that was not a good relationship either. So
no, what? Spill the beans, dude.
Well, that's why I was trying to look it up right now. But Jizuke announced, not on the team this year. Gonna be doing something else. And especially after talking to people, that is not a good relationship. Danny was like goodbye or something like that. Was period. And Jizuke, answered in kind. But that's why when we're looking at so many of these teams and we're on paper grading them of star power and taking all these factors into consideration, old plus new, something that you can't fully understand until they're actually in the same environment, working with each other in these harsh conditions, which are, you have to be around these people in intense, competitive environments for extended periods of time, is those relationships that really matter for these games. These are team games at the end of the day. And so that is one thing that, GMs always complain to me about is, I did everything, getting all these pieces together. And then how would I know that this player, had some history with this other player and decided, guess what? I'm never ganking top or something like that. Those types of things actually happen.
It does. But one thing that a lot of people were emphasizing to me this year was the importance of trying to screen for that and trying to develop better processes to like understand if the players are going to get along. Like having the players before they sign them spend time together, like listening to them playing games together, like getting in calls and doing VOD reviews together, like watching Worlds together, doing all these things to try to like, and of course you can't replicate the extreme high pressure as you're saying,
and you can easily fake those if you're not an idiot. I feel like
you can
if you have a little bit of social intelligence,
tiny bit.
But the person who's on the team can decide if they like them or not, and maybe have some influence. So I do think that it was good to hear that there was like people were trying to really improve those processes and really screen for them as much as they could, because it's such an important part, right? And it's like it's so easy to understand after you live and play with someone like all this time, even though people have separated lives a bit, it's like your whole life is with this person. And if you don't like that person and there's like a disagreement that just keeps festering, getting worse and worse, it's really, really hard to work with someone like that.
Well, and it's just a larger time commitment than most jobs where you're like often probably living near them or with them outright, and then working 12 hours a day in an extra high stress level environment, where like,
and usually they're free time and people are publicly judging you. And
it's like, the public judgment thing, all that combines to make any like personality clashes exacerbated.
Yeah. I only have to see Mark a few times a week. It's fine.
I keep walking over the Travises. I walk over the Travises. I'm like, hi, Travis. Hi, Kobe. Slams the door on me every time.
Like I said, you only need a little bit of social intelligence to be able to pretend.
Zero
like,
doesn't
I
count.
don't need this in my life.
All right. We got C9 now. C9 was sent to Group A by TL, so they're kind of like the fourth place team. But again, we have to remember that this is for lock-in. This is not necessarily where people think they're going to be by the end. LS came out and people were getting really excited. He basically said the year is a failure unless we win spring and summer and get world semifinals, aka like do one better and one better than what C9 did this year, right? Because C9 won one of the two splits and got quarters, so it's like one up. And I think, though it's extremely lofty, I also think that if you're LS, why would you take the job if you don't think you can do it better, right? And so like that is just kind of like stepping 1 foot forward. But even he said, based on some of the visa stuff and everything, they weren't sure that they would be good for lock-in. So like he didn't say he was going to win lock-in or anything like that. So maybe why they slid a little bit. But it is a very exciting team going heavy on Korean imports.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about people being excited for this. I think that universally people are looking forward to these games, whether they are fans or not, because you either get these, big flame posts afterwards and the haha, I told you so type of thing.
New LS didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, or the church members.
Or I never doubted them.
It's just hard not to be excited about this roster for that reason. Like it will be exciting because one, LS obviously stepping in and having this mindset about the game and his approach and the sinners and all this stuff. But then also the roster was built with a pretty clear intention in a lot of ways, with bringing over some Korean players, some of them more developmental than others. Like, all right, Summit's been a rock in the LCS for a little bit. Berserker was the most LCK, excuse me. And then Berserker was the most promising academy player, their challenger. It's called challenger there, but it's basically our academy. He was the most dominant laner in academy. Everyone had their eye on this guy. They got him, and then they also got Winsome, who was even a tier down from that. So they kind of took from all three tiers of the Korean ecosystem, and they're clearly trying to target these people, get them over early, some of them, and start bringing them into the North American side. So between Summit Blaber, Fudge we didn't even talk about yet. The lane swap mid is also crazy. Then you have Berserker, and then it's Azael or Winsome. They're still kind of flip-flopping on that, but they're gonna probably pick one over the course of the season.
Were the claims around Fudge ending up being a top 3 mid laner in LCS aspirational?
I think he said he wanted both Fudge and Blaber to be the best in the West in their role.
By was it a timeline or
this
something?
This year, I think.
Okay,
yeah. I don't think it's like out
because that makes sense. It's definitely going to take some work.
But that's still like you're better than Caps, you're better than Inspired, you're better than these people in their role, Perks and Bjergsen and so on, right?
That's I really do like aspirational and lofty goals.
Yeah.
Because if you're aiming that high, then even if you fall a bit short, it's still gonna be pretty good.
But you're gonna get memed so hard if it doesn't work, and that's why a lot of people hedge their bets with.
But that's
these goals.
content.
It is. It's great for us.
Yeah, that's why I love that AMA.
But that's why people don't do it, is because they're scared of having it thrown in their face. And I do think it's like it's gotten people excited. Like you said, if you love Cloud9, if you hate Cloud9, if you love LS, if you hate LS, he threw down the gauntlet, and you want to know what happens, one side or the other.
I think the key part is, and what I think is the coolest part is that they're not scared.
Yep.
That they're definitely going to put it there. As far as the actual individual moves, let's get right into it, because I actually was pretty hyped when they announced Summit, because I feel like Summit was the best part of Sandbox for quite a long time. Berserker, as with a lot of some of the other picks from other regions that are purely based on their mechanics and these teams doing their scouting, going to have less insight, obviously, less tape. So I'm a little bit more hesitant on that one, but they seem extremely excited for his mechanics and what he's already displayed. So at least they have the building blocks and the confidence to move forward with this. As far as the Summit one, though, I think that is a good move. And the Fudge switching over to mid lane, solo laner switching has been one of my I guess most comfortable role swaps that I'll readily accept. So it's not the biggest deterrent for me in the beginning.
Yeah, and he's been a fairly adaptable player for the 1 year that we've seen him. Like in terms of LCS level, we haven't seen a ton out of Fudge. On the Kareem import point, I've been doing a lot of VOD reviewing on my stream, and I was watching Berserker, and one thing that impressed me was actually he was pretty smart. For being someone who had 10 CSD on average at 10, I'm like, wow, that's really insane. You must be hella aggressive. But then there were a lot of times where his support went roaming. He actually played the weak side correctly and didn't make a lot of mistakes and had really good positioning. And so I bought into the hype pretty quick watching him play.
The one thing I'm most worried for actually is Blaber and LS's style from the past, because LS has been very, very outspoken, super flaming most early game things, and specific champions like Olleh, which is literally one of Blaber's best champions ever, and how Cloud9 have dominated multiple splits of LCS. So I know that LS also sometimes over exaggerates and plays into the theater of going super hard with some of the extremes. So with a person like Blaber and a jungler like Blaber, that's where I see the most clash with the LS style. If you're taking it at face value, which is what has happened in the past, and the big, Renekton or Olaf are the prime examples.
And he, more than just criticizing the style that Blaber plays, he's actually criticized Blaber a lot. He was saying, I think it was during this year's Worlds or maybe the one before, but that Blaber wouldn't even be a top 5 jungler in EU. And to go from that to
best Western,
he has to be the best Western jungler is that's a big jump, right? And it is always hard to know because it's stream persona versus what you actually think, and there sometimes can be a pretty big gulf. If you say something big, it's going to get more reaction, more attention. That's kind of like what a stream is. But it'll be really interesting. I'm so curious to see is he actually going to stick to that style? Because pros think Lee Sin is amazing. Pros think Renekton is amazing. Pros think these picks are fantastic. LeBlanc, Lee Sin, etc. And LS hates those picks, at least on a stream, right? Is it going to be Cho'Gath, Karthus, Ornn, Aphelios, and Lulu, right? Is that what we're getting every game? Are they going to totally change the style? Because Cloud9 has been known for so many years as the team that takes risks, is aggressive, and as a result, they have been the best performing international team from North America ever, right? It's been TSM and TL, and a lot of those teams have stacked the championships up playing more of risk-averse style, slow, macro, bot lane focus, this type of thing. And Cloud9 was never that. They were always more the aggressive team. So, I wonder, do they lose their identity? And, that is a way that potentially it could backfire.
Well, they bought a new identity is how I see it.
Well, then will that work, right? Because it's always been, you come to Worlds and everyone's like, well, we believe in Cloud9 because they're going to adapt and they're going to play aggressive, and the slow style doesn't work. And if the new style for Cloud9 is play as slow as possible and go full scaling, and I know those are two different things, so I'm not trying to put words in LS's mouth or anything. But if it is a big change from where they were, will that still work on the international stage?
I mean, one of the things that in his AMA he was talking about, someone asked about, you're going to make Summit play, not play Renekton, Aatrox, these kind of things. Because if you look at Summit, he's often early blinding
And
Renekton. Nars is most played,
Yep.
played like 14 games of it last year. It's a lot of these kinds of things that LS supposedly doesn't like. But in his AMA, he said that, he's going to have to work with his players. He understands it's not like my way or the highway. He's going to throw a fit if they pick a center champ. He acknowledged that they're going to pick center champs at some points. And he's like, as long as I'm sinning less, that's all that matters. So if he thinks it's a good time for
That's
Renekton,
my
you're going to see it.
expectation.
So
That was the thing that I latched onto. He was like, well, it'll be okay in some cases, as long as like the other team is sinning to some degree. Then he's like, okay, this unlocks this level of sin that he's willing to.
if you're in the fourth
to
layer of hell,
something,
I
you're
can go
just
to
like,
the third ring of hell.
I'm just like-
That's the level. Yeah.
That's good to hear, right? Because I think you do need to be somewhat realistic, especially when you talk about comfort. Comfort's really important, and players have played these things so many times. But Summit, you should be excited if you're a Cloud9 fan. I think Summit is, like, bar none, going to just be the best top laner in the league out of the gate. Like, he is going to be really, really good. He's going to be dominant in a different way than Alphari. Like, unless Cloud9 in a sense decides to put all the resources top, because like what TL did with Alphari was just kind of unique in what they gave him. But I do think he's going to be the best top laner in the league. Like, this is like when Someday came over for me, and it was like you're getting an LCK player, at their peak or very close to their peak, coming in, and they should be incredible. Like, Someday was like top 3, in the league when he came over. Summit is in a similar position.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of faith in this team. I'm excited to see how it goes no matter what. Even if it crash and burns, I'll be there. Like, this was the greatest car wreck I've ever seen. And I think there is a world where it all works together, Summit early picking his stuff. Berserker is this like carry that they give counterpick to a little bit more. There's a world where all this works together under LS's philosophy.
Absolutely. It's going to be really, really exciting. Hopefully Fudge can improve and go into mid lane as well. All right. So the next team would be TSM then. EG sent TSM to Group A.
all right, Mark,
All right.
what you got? Start us
You
off.
want the down low on this? Okay, so obviously it's interesting. North America has turned into mini worlds. We have LCK C9, you have EU TL, and now you have LDL/LPL China TSM. So they keep Huni Spica and they grab Tactical from Team Liquid. And then they ran this kind of boot camp in Korea that was testing both Korean and Chinese players.
Everyone says that, but when I talked to Peter, I think it was actually in China. I mean, unless I'm confused.
I don't know.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, this is the rumor. No, I mean,
yeah.
if it can be, definitely correct me.
Yeah.
But anyways, they walked away with two prospects, both that played in the LDL, Keaiduo and Shenyi. And apologies if we get these names mispronounced a little bit.
Shenyi is easy. The other one's hard.
Keaiduo is what I was
Keaiduo?
told, but
Okay.
we'll get pronunciation guys in the future. They don't exist right now. But they're two LDL prospects that they believe in. They also brought in Toucouille, and they have a decent ecosystem with Peter Zhang as well to bring in more Mandarin speakers and things like that, because Spica as well. So like it is an ecosystem that is probably one of the few in North America who could pull this off.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really excited to see how this goes, because something I've been talking about for the last couple of years with teams and on the dive is like the LDL is like this gold mine of players, right? Like there's 18 LDL teams. They're expanding to 20.
It was like 26 because it was 17.
26.
It was like
excuse me.
17 from the league and then like 9 independent orgs.
Oh, there you go.
It was
So,
a million.
I mean, there's so many teams. I guess it's 18 LPL teams currently, and that's expanding to 20. LDL, I guess, is even more.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like 80% or 70%. Some enormous percentage of the people that play League are in China. Like, their league is the best in the world. Like they're winning all these international tournaments. They're gonna have incredible young players. But one of the things that TSM really was kind of like stressing is that it's like, hey, you need to have the right infrastructure to actually bring over these players. And when I talked to a lot of other orgs as well, I was like, hey, why haven't you considered this? Like, well, to be honest, we don't really know the players' needs. Like, we've worked with Korean players, we have Korean translators, like we know what, create some about Korean culture and how to make the players comfortable. But it's very difficult to get these young players, pull them out of their homes, bring them over here and expect them to excel when you don't have a system, like a sports system built around them. Obviously, they kind of tested this a little bit with Sword Art coming over from the LPL. They have Peter Zhang. They picked up Toucouille, who can speak. And like, I was so impressed with how good his English is. By the way, I was talking to Toucouille, like he was like, "Yeah, I really need to work on my English," and he's typing me in like flawless sentences, and it's like his grammar is better than mine. I'm like, I don't think so, dude. I think you're doing fine.
Yeah.
But so they have built up, somewhat of a system around it. There are still going to be, I think, some bumps in the road, even if they're not talking about them as much. Parth talked about how for him and some of the other coaches, they had to have comms translated to even know like if the players were communicating well or what they're communicating. That's going to be something you're going to have to do for LCS too if you want more people's input than those who can speak Mandarin. Spica, I believe, is like fully fluent. Huni and Tactical are going to try to learn Mandarin or try to learn a little bit. At the same time, they are also going to be teaching Keaiduo and Shenyi English. So they're putting a lot into this. They know that the big issue is going to be communication, but their hope and what Chawi was saying to me was they think that the three most important roles to communicate is support, jungle, mid, and they're less worried because those three will all be able to speak the same language. He was also emphasizing that like in their boot camp, they did some games and it was like they had games where people weren't able to communicate at all playing, and some of the teams had like insane synergy. He was saying even without comms. So they seem pretty confident. I do think even with that, you have to be able to communicate somewhat, and reviewing after games, even if you have a translator, is just more difficult. Like Tactical and Shenyi probably can't have complex conversations about how they want to play. They're going to have a translator there. So like there is some extra burden, but I'm really excited to see how this works out. The two things that they really emphasized that they were looking for, mechanics and communication. And those were like the two things that they're, kind of like screening for most in the boot camp. And these are two players that they believe like have incredible mechanics and really communicate well. Of course, that is handicapped by language, right? But I do think that even though these players are very young, it's like you look at like General Sniper, right? Like, so there's people that have been playing the game for a really long time, even though they're super young, because they've just been playing since they were like a baby, right?
Yeah. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, we should start looking at talent in their development systems and get them early. And one of the things I said was like, I don't think if you got Chovy before he became the Chovy we all know, that then he becomes that guy if he spent his whole development cycle in North America. It's less that point and more like if you can find people who are on the brink of superstardom, maybe they can then find that here. The thing about Shenyi, like not all prospects are the same part of their development cycle. Shenyi subbed in for FPX and looked good. Like he is starter ready right now. He from my understanding too, he even had LPL offers. I could be wrong about that, but I heard that. So like he's just ready to go. And he's just taking his first step in North America in terms of like the full-on starter. But he's a beast. Keaiduo, from what I saw, the mechanics thing that you're talking about they were targeting, great. His CSing is insane. Doesn't feel like he's ever missed CS. Every game I watched, he was like top or even with the highest person in the game. Made some mistakes in like team fights and stuff, but like that's exactly what you're talking about. Your game sense will get leveled up, but your mechanics are there, and apparently it's communication. So like I see what they're going for. I think this is something that people haven't really tried, and something that C9 are trying, and some other teams are doing it with the even ERL leagues, and now also with LCK and C9. Like I am glad people are starting to explore this more.
I would say TSM kind of tried it a little bit, different situation, but I think they're trying to recreate what they had with Bjergsen, right? Bjergsen was obviously more proven because he was already starting in the EU LCS at that time, but he was like a new guy, and then they tried to do it a little bit with Broken Blade. They're trying to go less for like the biggest star now and someone who they think is like a rising star or like about to become that. Yeah. And I think Shenyi is like in a similar position to like what some of these other guys were. Obviously it's not one-to-one, but I think that's what they are hoping for is get someone with incredible mechanics with these fundamentals that you think you can build on and then mold them, because it's more easy. And I heard this from a number of different teams talking to some of the teams that are going for young players, is they feel that some of the older players, not that these players can't learn and not that these players aren't capable and great, but that they're very set in their ways and they don't want to change their style, whereas younger players are easier to mold and adapt to what you believe to be the best style.
Yeah, and I just want to caution against some of the people that got real big googly eyes and want to, scoop up all this, super young talent, that it is so much individual, humans. And so it's going to be different case by case basis.
Totally.
And so that's why I will always approach these sorts of things with caution. I think especially right now should be approached with caution, but they do seem the most committed, and they definitely have the best setup as far as any of the LCS teams to even attempt this. So it's another one of these situations where this year coming into LCS, we have like 30 experiments going, and we're like, all right, run them off. Let's see what works, because it's going to be exciting following all of these different instances and these different pathways that the teams are trying to set out on. Because as we go deeper in the lineups here, we're going to see some other ones that, you know, like CLG, for instance, I've gone a whole bunch of Academy and North American amateur.
Yep.
And it's gonna be a fun journey to follow.
It's gonna be really exciting, and you know, like whether or not I think TSM it will work out, I just am excited to watch it and see like how it does go. Because if it goes really well, I think it's huge for TSM.
Yeah, my big thing is that I'm happy teams have direction now. Whereas for a large portion of the history of the LCS, most teams, not everyone's quite there, but for the most part, for a large portion of the history of the LCS, people just grabbed whatever veterans were available, whatever the 5 biggest names that their org could sign, and slapped them on a roster, and they're like, great, we'll get 7th. And I'm like, well, what does that do for you? At least now I feel like these teams have goals.
I thought you were going to say, well, great, let's get 10th. What does that do for you? Because we saw that as well.
That can happen too. I was gonna play them. Let's talk Immortals.
We can go to Immortals. Immortals is not going like new young talent. They are more going towards you know, more like the older style of building a roster, right? Getting pieces that they know, getting a lot of veterans. Travis did an interview with it was with Revenge and Wild Turtle, and I want to say their GM or president, someone in the management side of Immortals. Excuse me for not remembering his name. But you know, they were talking a lot about how like Revenge, they knew that they wanted to build around Revenge, and he was kind of like their big piece. And then so he was actually very heavily involved in the recruitment of players, and like, you know, and saw kind of like behind the curtain how off season works and all that. But they went with a lot of veterans. I mean, it's Power of Evil, Wild Turtle, they brought them in, they kept Xerxes and Destiny, and you have a team with a tremendous amount of experience that obviously is trying to go more of like the surefire route, like we know what we're getting.
And I feel like this a lot is just FlyQuest 2.0 to me, a little bit. You know, obviously the PoE and Wild Turtle working together part is there, but also like Xerxes being a veteran jungler who's not like hyper aggressive and has a more control oriented playstyle, I would say, which is how Santorin was during that roster. The question is, can Destiny be Ignar? Because Ignar is actually incredible when he's on. And then can Revenge be Solo, who was actually quite good that split? They went to back-to-back finals and then went to Worlds and like beat top esports in a game.
Went 3-3, right?
Yeah, like that was a really good run for these players.
That's what I'm going to say. I think this is a strong strategy, especially if, like we're seeing, there's a huge money gap between top 5 teams and bottom 5 teams. And beyond just money, some players literally will not even play for bottom 5 teams, just refuse it even if they do get the offers. So if you are one of these cheaper teams, if you could be FlyQuest 2.0,
sign us up.
Skipping back last year, by the way, we're just
2020
jumping over that one.
Yeah.
To rewind all the way to there.
Fair to them, they had to rebuild fully.
That would be amazing results, you know. So that would be a very good investment if they can actually manifest those results on top of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they're going to be a pretty solid team. I mean, I have a lot of faith in Power of Evil. I think Power of Evil is so good. And generally, like wherever he goes, the team does pretty well, right? Like he's done pretty well pretty much everywhere he's been in North America with a lot of different teams. Biggest question marks for me, I think you kind of already mentioned them, or you did. Revenge and Destiny, you know, the idea that like, can these guys be at that same level to like kind of reach the success that the FlyQuest-esque team had? Turtle, I actually think, is coming off of quite a good year. I mean, CLG was absolutely a hot mess, but I think Turtle played pretty well. Like he was definitely not a bottom of the league AD carry. I thought he was playing like, you know, solidly middle of the pack. And I think this team is probably going to be solidly middle of the pack. I think the question is, you know, is this the one team that can kind of like punch above their weight class, right? Like if they have really good synergy and Revenge has a really good year and like Destiny's playing really well, you know, can they be that team that could potentially like threaten going to Worlds? Because there is this huge gulf between top 5, bottom 5 as far as spending, but this is a team out of the bottom 5 that you're maybe like have the most faith in, I would think.
I would even say like some of these teams might not work.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about C9 and TSM and these like developmental approaches they're going, like some of these can fail, not develop as much as they want, and suddenly you're third or second best in the league. Like that's actually not that hard to imagine with how...
Second feels hard for me to imagine.
Second might be a little much, but it at least shows that like the door is open. Like, you know, it's not that cut and dry this time outside of potentially those top 2.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for this team. I think this is going to be a good barometer for how we judge a lot of the other teams that are going to have so much more variance, where we do have to put trust in a lot of these scouting combines and internal screenings that they have used. You mentioned Wild Turtle. Apparently, he beat out a whole bunch of other AD carries, by the way. So that's another thing when we're coming down to these teams, and even when we're evaluating some older names.
Yep.
These teams are not at the point where they're blindly signing people to their squads. They have whatever limitations that they have coming into it with budgets, and they're going through their tryouts, and that is what is filtered through.
It'll be interesting. I will say, if they do poorly, then this is a complete failure, because it's the CLG style of building a roster.
Yeah.
It's going for all known quantities. So if you're like 4th or 5th or something like that, then it's like, great, this totally worked. But otherwise, what do you get out of a year where this team gets 9th?
I like the continuing to build and have their faith in revenge, because like the EG setup, I think the best strategy is to go with, I have a lot of faith in, 1 or 2 of our North American talent rookies that we're trying to build up, and surrounding them with some more established and some, philosophies that have been proven.
Just feels like they didn't take a lot of shots, and they're not like building. It feels like built to win now, but I'm not sure that they can win now. It's like is how I feel. I don't know if you. Agree.
I'm just saying my answer to that question would be revenge would be the
fair.
thing that you still want.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of it. Like, there's a couple pieces that I don't think the story's been written on, but
totally.
How much higher can you go? I don't know. On to CLG, who was thrown in there by TSM. This is, if you want the hype gun to point it at me, this is my hype gun team. Dark horse to make top.
Azael's got a silencer on his, because I saw him pull the trigger and no noise.
There's no hype.
There's no
no
noise.
hype came out of it. Wait, it's CLG. They're great.
He just straight up shot you.
I noticed how you didn't finish your sentence. You're like, they're my dark horse to make.
I said top 4.
Oh, top 4.
Maybe I didn't. I think I did.
I felt like you just kind of faded off there.
Contracts: Jenkins, Palafox, Luger, Poom. This is a team that has, when we're talking about the NA development angle, Luger is from TCL. He was playing on 100 Thieves. He's a beast. He stomped Academy the entire year, basically. Him and Poom are a threat. Jenkins, for subbing in for Alfari, actually did a pretty good job and didn't get a ton of resources to do it. Like, I was looking at this earlier today. Alfari had 12% jungle proximity. Jenkins had half of that, literally, which, by the way, Alfari was in the top of the league. Jenkins was near the bottom at 6%. Like, he was someone who worked on an island. Hello, you want to play resource around Luger? Like, all this works for me conceptually. Palafox wants to play a team-centric game. Contract was already so good that he was stealing starting time in EG, This is a roster that I like, I don't think they're going to go to Worlds, but like, I'm low-key hyped about this as a developmental roster.
I'm actually super hyped.
Let's go.
I'm
2 people on the hype gun. How many bullets are in the chamber?
It's with the lens.
One more?
Let me add this lens to you and see how hyped you get. With the lens of, this is literally the bottom of the barrel. You cannot do worse than 10th and 10th, multiple seasons, multiple splits for CLG. It cannot get worse from what we have already seen. So they blew it up.
That's just like, you're like, he's shaking the monkey's paw, and you're cursing them so bad. It's not possible. They could never do worse. There's nothing that could.
How do you do worse than double 10th?
I mean, you get 0 wins. You're like, your organization implodes.
It gets removed from the LCS.
I'm pretty sure last year qualified as organization imploding. But let's get to some of the positives.
So I don't think that they're going to blow up for what it's worth. I'm happy with how the team is built.
Yeah. You're talking about Luger, and him coming over from TCL. One of the big things to me is that he has put in his time already over here, and as the duo with Poom. So I was, talking to some of the players that I've worked with, both of them, and these two did not initially get along or see eye to eye in game either when he first came over, and they've worked through that process. So those types of things to me, when you do have imports and stuff like that, and all these questions I have were like, oh my God, okay, so even if you do your combine and this guy's got really good mechanics and you want to transplant, there's so many things that you just cannot for sure control for. Knowing that some of those have been controlled for, and there are some relationships here that are going to give you strength and support, that makes me a lot happier.
I mean, I don't believe there's a world in which there's top 4, but I do think
0% chance that you'll.
I mean, I'll give them like a 1% chance to get top 4.
Gotta get that one crit rune in there, Azael. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm gambling on right
but
now.
it's one of those things where it's like, but I think that's okay. That the way that they've restructured the org, right? They got all kinds of new people, brought in new coaching staff, new players, new management, right? I talked to their GM. One of the things he was talking about was with Luger. They really liked that they got to see him actually play both styles. When Tenacity and Kenby were in, he was kind of playing weak side because they were focusing top side carry and playing more of that. And when they played with Gamsu and Chad, that it was like more like he had to carry, and they showed that he could kind of do that. So like they are really excited about Luger and his future. And there's a lot of bets for the future here, which is really cool. And I think for CLG to have a successful season, they don't need to get top 5. They just need to have like two of these young players be good. And if you have 2 of these young players be good, then it's like, damn, you now have a core to build around, right? And you can go out from there. And I think it's really great if you have 3 that are really good, because then you can build around that. And then when you say, okay, we're ready, we can try to win, then you import 2 people and you go for it, right? But just the way that they built this is so much better that even if they got the exact same results as CLG last time, I would still be way more happy with how this roster was crafted, because CLG actually spent a lot of money on their previous roster, got all veterans, and then were the worst team in the league, right? Like you actually can't do worse than that. Like that is like, as far as like conceptually, that's the worst you could do. So this is just like so much better. I think CLG fans should be bought in that it is like a new era, like they have a new kind of plan and strategy here, and I'm excited for CLG to like kind of have a bit of a rebirth. But I would caution getting too hyped, because I do think it's a little bit early to be talking about like top 4, top 5 with these players and with this team. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Not even in the right year, and I'm telling you, it's fine.
Okay, I think you're gonna be disappointed.
I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for them too.
Get in the caboose.
But I just don't think that they're a top 4 team.
Yeah,
We're driving the train. You're like, I don't even know if you want to get on the train. You got your ticket. You're kind of looking at it. Get on the
I'm
train.
just watching the train crash.
You're not gonna leave the station. Like that's not gonna.
I like how you're on board with like the shotgun strategy for rookies. Just everybody be try and be young talent, and if a couple of them hit, then you're like, oh, cool.
If you're gonna be if you're gonna be near
duds,
the bottom or even bottom half, I just think that makes way more sense than trying to like build knowns and not win anything.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I've been a big proponent of shotgun attempts in multiple facets of life, and have converted Travis over to this.
You need to tell me about some
to which he has found success as well. So proven strategy.
You need a off-camera explanation of some of these.
He's going on some shotgun
You
dates.
need
I was like, what?
He'll go out with anyone. Just
I went on 6 dates tonight. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. He's just like, you want to date you.
3 minutes in, he's like, whoa, I'm getting off this train. This one is not for me.
If only one of them work out,
there you
then
go.
you're happy.
Only needs to work once, Kobe. I'm with you.
He's not trying to win worlds over here.
All right. Immortals sends Golden Guardians to Group A. This is Licorice, Pridestalker, Blaze Olive, Lost, and Olleh. A lot of talk obviously going to be focused around Pridestalker and Olleh as people that are like, huh?
Yeah, so I posed that question straight to some Golden Guardians employees, and they actually said that they had their eyes on Pridestalker for a very long time, even before Worlds ended, when they were over looking at scrims and stuff in Europe. So this is not an uncommon answer when I've posed this question to pretty much all of the teams on questioning X prospect. They're like, well, you see, you trust us because we did our scouting combine or our scrims or our screen or whatever, and they're insane, crazy mechanics. They're going to blow you away. So I feel like everybody has that sort of note from the doctor to give you for any of the pickups. And you have to distill a bit
but
behind that.
If they don't even have a note, then it's doomed.
Exactly. But I would be way more worried if they didn't have the note and they didn't answer with, well, you see, we did our, intense, even before World scrimming. And
they didn't say they pulled out a shotgun and just aimed at a list of names.
They're throwing darts.
Yeah. If they told me shotgun strategy for choosing, and this is just the one that turned out, I would be less confident.
We actually signed 7 junglers. We just didn't announce the other 6.
Whichever one got the visa first, there you go.
Yeah.
So
whoever gets back to me,
congratulations.
Hunger Games, put them in a pit. Who comes out?
Oh, but yeah, and it sounds kind of crazy to say that, but that is an improvement to have literally everybody answer with some form of that of, hey, trust us, we've done our work, scouting or screening or whatever. We've had years where that has not gone. Like sometimes teams have not had that answer. So
and
I'll take it.
I'll give them some hype a little bit, was that they were 6-6 once they got Licorice.
Yeah.
And Blaze Olive was pushing into the All-Pro voting. He was really good. Licorice bounced back from whatever was going on in FlyQuest. Lost from TSM. You know, you can debate was how good was Stixxay versus him. I know a lot of TSM fans were disappointed and lost, but he wasn't like a disaster. And then Chime and Iconic compared to Pridestalker and Olleh, I think you could even make the case that this is potentially upgrades in both positions.
I think so.
So, like, you're talking about a team that was already 500 on the second half of the year, or second half of summer. Like, this is a team that could be decent. And, you know, there are a couple pieces that are going to continue to grow. I don't think a Blaze Olive has hit his ceiling necessarily. So that's where I'm at on the hype factor, is like, they were actually coming together at the end of last year, and they probably made upgrades.
Me too. I'm actually pretty happy with how they did it, and totally agree with you, Kobe, that like every single team I reached out to talk to about their players had good reasoning. It felt like it was like well researched. A lot of times they had a previous experience with the players that like made them really feel good about them. And like, I was like, hell yeah, this is great. You know, Licorice, obviously, I think is a really solid piece that they already had. They believe that Blaze Olive, you know, already showed a lot of growth and can continue to grow a lot. Pridestalker, one of the things that, you know, I had heard that they were really emphasizing is that while they thought Iconic could grow, that he wasn't much of a talker, and they just felt like they needed more communication from the jungle, and that's something that Pridestalker does apparently very well. Olleh, a lot of people, I think, were kind of like memeing that, but I was pretty sold when I read he did Twit longer when he first got announced, or when he was coming back to pro, and I was really impressed with like how much he dedicated into this. So he basically decided that he wanted to come back to pro, and he said he made a promise to himself that he couldn't get top 10 in the Korean ranked server, that he was just never going to play again. He was basically going to quit because he had moved on. He had learned some programming and stuff. So he got up to rank 3. He was like almost 1,400 LP, and he had played like thousands of games. His main account had like over 2,000. It was like 2,300 games or something played. He had Smurfs with like hundreds and hundreds of games played. And at one point, I think he had two accounts in like top 10 or top 20 or something. So like he decided, this is my goal. If I can't make it happen, I quit. I'm going to give up. And he made it happen. So like he has grinded incredibly hard to get back. And I hope that people do give him a bit of a shot, because, you know, you would be pretty excited if it was a player that you had not ever heard of, that you were told had like 2 accounts at the top of Korean Challenger. So, you know, I'm excited to see kind of growth from him and see what kind of a player he looks like now.
Yeah, I will always give players second chances, even third chances sometimes, if you can prove that dedication and that work ethic. Mm-hmm. You know, I do, and we've spoken about this a significant amount of times. Like, I do think people should give more benefit of the doubt just because they've seen or had experiences with players. You know, don't cut them off just because of, you know, something that happened in the past, or you know, because of age or anything like that that's happening. So I like giving second chances, and I think he deserves one.
Absolutely. Gonna be an exciting team. So CLG then sent FlyQuest to Group A. So that would be like the 9th team. I got a chance to talk to a lot of players about Toucouille. And it kind of made me like more excited about him. I think he's getting a little bit of a bad rap. I talked to some people that coached him. I talked to some people that, you know, like cover the LFL. I talked to some people actually like on FlyQuest and stuff. And I think that, you know, one of the things was like, and myself included, had I not talked to people, I would have just like VOD reviewed, you know, summer split games and looked at those most recent ones. But one of the things that a lot of people were kind of emphasizing is, so like, no one's telling me that this is like the next Faker, but people are saying that this is maybe like the next Power of Evil. In that really strong control mages, very good in lane. A lot of LFL mid laners had him ranked, you know, like top 2 in the LFL as far as mid laners. You know, not like what I was hearing some people say, like, he's like 8th or 10th, he's terrible. In summer, the meta didn't really fit him. So I do think it's still going to be a big question mark. Like, hey, if it's like Yasuo and Diana and Aurelia and Renekton, it's probably not your guy. I have been told he's trying to put in a lot of effort to actually learn those champions, and he is a very young player. But a lot of people were really emphasizing that he's a very, very good laner, good at playing for the team, good communicator, really good attitude and kind of like hungry to learn, just like pleasant to be around, nice guy, and just excellent on control mages. Like even hearing from some pros that they thought that like he is going to be like the best control mage player in the league, which is a specific style. So again, who knows? But it at least kind of like made me excited to watch the player, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think if you did go and watch some of his games from the summer season, like I did,
They weren't good.
No, they were fine.
Okay.
No, I actually think he was one of the better LFL mids, from my understanding. And I think the things that you said line up perfectly with what I saw. He played a ton of Orianna. He was playing for the team mostly. I watched his Rise games and how he was moving around the map. He had a pretty good idea of how the fight was going to flow and like where he needed to be on Orianna. Like, am I going in here to try and get support? Am I zoning this guy? Am I peeling for my carry? Like, I thought he looked pretty good, honestly. The only big criticism I could have is like you're playing in the LFL. Like I'm watching him play games versus people I've never heard of, and then I'm watching Blue play against Caps and Humanoid, and like, well, this one doesn't look as good, but also it's a different league. So that would probably be the biggest thing is that he's going to be playing in North America. But one of the points I would raise about that is that this is probably the easiest time you could have debuting as a mid laner in the LCS than you could have had in the last like forever, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like so many of these guys are new and young. I was looking at like 2019. I just picked a random year. Like if you were a new young prospect coming in the league, you're playing against Niski, Power of Evil. You're playing against Pobelter, Frogging, Crown, Bjergsen, Jensen. It's like you were playing against multiple players who are like legitimately incredible, even if they've started to go past their prime a little bit or whatever. This split, you don't even have Jensen. He's not in the league.
Jensen and Suzuki were two of our three
all pros. They're gone. Perks is gone. You have literally.
That was actually all three of our all pros.
You have PoE and Bjergsen, and then a Blaze Olive and Abadaga. Abadaga is the one I'm forgetting. So you have like three legitimately like borderline all pros, maybe four if you want to throw in a Blaze Olive, but then you have 6 players who are basically the same as you. You're a debuting player. I put Fudge in that category as a mid laner. You have the majority of the league are people that like you can go out there and shut everyone up very quickly for the people for Blue and for Toucouille, who people are kind of like, why are they here?
Yeah.
If you can beat half the other people.
I mean, that sounded very French. That was
why are they here?
Why are they here?
I heard totally
that
different.
sound
I thought
French?
that was like some like Southern,
I was going more Southern.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why are they here? I've never heard that
was
guy.
A joke.
Oh, okay.
That did not sound French at all.
Okay, I was really confused.
I got confused because I was like, I wasn't supposed to sound French.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I thought
We
that
both
was.
missed it.
I thought that was an obvious. Okay.
Nope, you wish.
Regardless, I actually, I had a lot of similar findings, but it didn't make me more excited. The intense focus on his own lane rather than moving more for plays did not make me super excited for the team or for FlyQuest. I do agree on mid lane right now is a bit soft for LCS because we've got Fudge lane swapping, we've got Bjergsen coming out of retirement, plus we had Jensen. Not finding a team, and Perks going back to you and all of that. So I do think it is a bit more open than usual, but it didn't have an extra excitement factor because we literally still have PoE and the like there. So to the point of the comparisons, well, we'll find out very quickly whether you are a PoE style player or you are going to be able to not live in the shadow of PoE, and people will use your name as the defining characteristic for this style. Like you take over this category,
Well, and that's the hope, is that he's a really young player. He's like not as far along in his career arc, and the hope is that he can round out his skill set, right? And that's like the people that were kind of trying to sell him to me were like, hey, he's already up here with this. He's not there with the other stuff, but if he could get there, then he's like really has the potential to be a star player, right? And that is a question mark, because I've also heard that he just struggles more when the game is really fast. That's part of the difficulty, I think, when you're playing against really aggressive teams. I do think that the LCS is more fast paced than the LFL, and I even heard that from some of the people in that league, that they think that might be something that he struggles with, is the additional pressure he'll face. But I'm just happy, going through these teams, everyone was giving me good reasoning. Everyone felt like pretty excited about it. FlyQuest really wanted to have jungle mid support as this kind of triumvirate, and these two young guys in Jose Dioto and Toucouille, who they think are going to be a really good pairing, and then obviously trying to pair them with someone who is very communicative and a big veteran who can hopefully help those players grow in Aphromoo.
Yeah, I was about to mention the rest of the team with Aphromoo and Johnson being reunited from their Dignitas days. They were a pretty solid lane. They could get things done. And Kumo had flashes of brilliance. I think, we're still waiting to see him fully like stand out in the LCS, but at least you have some other pieces around Toucouille, so it's not like, hey, who are the threats on this team? It's like they're probably going to try and make some plays around bot lane to get Johnson fed the way that Dignitas did 2 or 3 years ago, and play a more team focused game, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good roster for them to be able to kind of recover from last year, but again, it seems like a very straightforward way to play for me. I see this team playing around dragons. I see this team playing 5-on-5s, and that is it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, very likely. And I mean, that's why they're likely going to be near the bottom of the league, right? But I still at least have some hope that like the bottom teams will not just be pushovers. Like I do feel like a lot of the teams felt like stronger about it. So it's like these are, you're not going to have 10 teams in the league that are like world's contenders. It's just not the way it works. But I do think that some of these teams have things that they're like building towards, have pieces that I'm excited to see how they do. And that is what a lot of these discussions actually got me excited for, was like, okay, hey, I'm at least interested in like following this player, seeing how this part of your team works, or seeing how this strategy or thing that you want to work on really works, because it kind of gives you something to follow along with. Dingjas?
Last and least. No. They were the last ones to get sorted in the groups. Dignitas. Some of this is not officially announced, I don't think, but everyone seems to be talking like this is the for sure roster.
Is it not?
I think it is, but I just don't think that they've like done like the pending riot approval tweet thing that a lot of people do. It's Fake God, River, Blue, Neo, and Biofrost. I'm
actually probably most hyped for River.
PSG baby.
Yeah, I thought he did really well. So I even though this is the last team, and I actually agree with kind of the mock draft or whatever, the draft that the LCS teams did in leaving Dig to 10. If we did a power ranking for lock-in tournament, I think my power ranking would look pretty similar to how the groups turned out, except there would be some shift at the top. I think a little bit, but yeah. So I am, I'm hyped. I'm glad, we're gonna get to cast some more River. I'm glad Biofrost is back. I think that's cool to be able to come back after he's been doing streaming and like attempting to stream, and doesn't seem like that kind of is fulfilling. And so I'm super happy to see him back in the league and have another chance. I'm not tremendously optimistic for their ranking or their chances, but to your point, I don't think we're gonna have dead games, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I heard some cool information about Blue and River that made me kind of more excited about them. I also think it's cool to see Biofrost back, because I know at least when Biofrost left, people were like kind of Biofrost doesn't have a team anymore, because it kind of was just like
he's still good.
He spent like all his time on TSM just like winning literally everything, and then was on, I guess it was like CLG for a little bit, and then just like gone, right? And everyone's kind of like, wait, what the hell?
He came back to TSM for that like little thing where him and Treats were like going back and forth.
Yeah. But it did feel like kind of quick for someone who had as much success as he had to drop out. So it's interesting to see him back. One of the things that was kind of cool about River is not just like, watching his games at Worlds, I was like, okay, this is a good player. But also, he's a guy who's like perennially like 1100 plus LP on the LCK server, on the Korean server, so he's a very good solo queue player. But something that I hadn't heard, that I was talking to Enetron, who's their coach, was saying that like when he went to the LJL, he learned the language there and was like to really try to become a leader. Then when he went to PCS, he like learned another language to really try to become again like a team leader and kind of like a core component, because he wants to shot call and really kind of embed himself in the culture. So that was one of the things that we had talked about, is like you're never always sure like how someone's going to fit into a new culture, and especially if it's their first time, how that transition is going to go. But they feel really confident that he is going to be like not only successful with it, but excited to kind of like come here, learn more English, really kind of like dive into it and become a leader on the team, because that's one of his goals. Also with Blue, the coach was kind of talking about like he had actually coached him in the past when they won TCL together, and felt that like he was being really underrated and that people were kind of overlooking the fact that he was having a lot of health issues last year. But he had actually been hospitalized, which was publicized, and there was an article about that where he had to be benched for a couple of weeks. I think that's when 2 hours came in. But he had been struggling with health issues last year, and he felt that had really kind of contributed to some of the poor performances that he showed in the LEC. But believes that he is, up on the level of some of the other like top TCL prospects that have come out, like people who have come, like Broken Blade was in TCL and Closer. Like he feels that like his mechanics and his peak like is on the level of those guys and has a lot of faith in him, having won the TCL with him. I know most people are not excited about Blue at all because he didn't look good in the LEC, but I do think it's fair to give a little bit of leeway with the kind of like X factor of having a lot of health issues.
Yeah, I think that's something that I hadn't known, but
yeah,
that's
I didn't know that either.
It is good to note, because I think what this team's going to struggle with is potentially firepower, in the sense of like who's carrying these games. Like Biofrost and River sound good, but like support and jungle can't carry, so you need one of these kind of newer guys, Neo, Blue, and FakeOdd to step up. Blue's most played champions were Syndra and Lucian. Like it was kind of a more self-centered playstyle in that sense, where you're going to be playing aggressive and lane stuff, but he still also had the worst laning stats in the league.
Yeah.
So it was like this mismatch. And then when I watched him play some of those games, I was watching his Lucian, and it like wasn't super aggressive, and like that was something that he's going to have to step up in, and hopefully now that he's healthier, he can and become a big carry for this team, comboing with River, because that's how they're going to need to climb out of what we all perceive to be the bottom.
I think Neo as well, right? I think Neo has actually, like when he was playing with Afro and stuff, I think he actually had some really good team fighting, and they had their moments as a pretty strong bot lane. So you're hoping you can recreate that. But yeah, I mean, it is going to be really this top 5 versus bottom 5, and I think it's going to be the goal of all of these kind of like bottom 5 teams that were created on much smaller budgets, to be able to really like take games off the top teams and find pieces that they can build around for the future. And I'm personally incredibly excited for this next year coming back into LCS. Worlds is going to be in NA. I think there's a lot of really cool rosters. There's at least pieces on every team that I'm actually legitimately really interested to watch. So I am insanely excited for Lock-In.
I think it was a great success last year. It was it just made the beginning of the year so much more exciting. So
it set up rivalries the whole time.
Yeah,
too.
super happy that
C9, TL going back and forth, Fudge versus Alfari, all that stuff.
Yeah, we get all of our overreactions because it's like a compressed tournament with all of these, so many rosters. Just 100 Thieves are staying the same. Literally every other team has lots of big changes that they've made. And
There's
so
optimism in the air.
You immediately get to have people that are like, what? You got those LCK young kids? What? You got the LDL players? What? You got the North American Academy players? What were you thinking? And you're not going to actually see any of these teams come to fruition within this tournament, but over the year, be tracking it. But I'm super excited to see it with so many different strategies taken, how they're going to incorporate them. And again, especially the ones that are bringing in players from, younger players from other cultures, how they're going to be able to create a good environment to allow them to succeed is going to be so big.
Absolutely. All right, we got a social question here. This one's from T-Speed21. Regardless of how successful they are, which team will be the most exciting to watch based on roster/staff moves?
It sounds like they're trying to lead in one direction.
C9, probably, right?
They're trying to lead there by specifically saying roster and staff, and by saying regardless
and
of
their
success.
social media and their content. Yeah. Okay, so everyone's gonna say Cloud9. We already hyped that reason up in the episode. Give me your second most then, because I think
EG. I actually still think I'm more excited to watch EG because I really want to see the development of Jojopyun and Danny, and I really want to see those guys become stars, and there to be like evidence, like here it is, like, get good young players. There are good young players to find in North America, not just abroad. I'm really excited for all the like young teams like TSM, C9, EG, probably my 3 biggest. But I would say I'm actually the most excited to watch Danny's second year and Jojopyun's first.
Yeah, I feel like this question is really difficult this year because we have so many things to be excited about that are different. You can go that route. You can also just as validly go with the route of, I'm excited to see one of the oldest players come back. Bjergsen coming back for Team Liquid. I want to see if Team Liquid can do it. They've got a role swap back to top lane packaged in the same team that they have the unretirement of perhaps the greatest ever LCS player coming back on the rift. Like, how can that not be exciting? Plus, especially after Worlds this year, Hans Sama had some of the slickest plays. So like
we eating good in the LCS.
I was gonna say specifically from the TL was when they play TSM. I just can't wait, given how much drama there has been. We didn't even touch the tip of the iceberg with the drama with TSM this offseason. I am excited to just see like Bjergsen versus TSM and like the community's reaction as the rosters and stuff play out. You know, just like I'm just gonna be eating my popcorn. Watching the drama.
You're going to be reacting and talking, and
my mouth will be full as I shout on Twitter of my own takes. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us for now. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this special holiday episode. Merry Christmas. Whatever you guys are celebrating, enjoy your time with your family and your friends. It's been nice to do this quick episode. I'm excited to be back again. We'll be back obviously when LCS is coming back in January. So we're gonna have a little bit of time off here too. But thank you for sending us questions. Thank you for sending us all the love. And we're doing this episode for you guys, for the fans. We don't usually do the off-season ones. So hopefully you enjoy it. We'll see you next year.
Happy holidays.